Here's Vice President Kamala Harris talking about policies and issues and things along those lines. And so last night, y'all heard me on this show break down these constant stories. Oh my goodness, Kamala Harris is the problem. Kamala Harris is in trouble. Why is she on the ticket? You got these folk at the Washington Post sitting here writing stories, trying to make the argument why she needs to be replaced on the ticket by Biden and all this bullshit. And I had somebody in the YouTube channel telling me, Roland, you shouldn't be saying that. Well, you can kiss my ass. This is some bullshit. Then the New York Times today came back with more bullshit. Go to my iPad, Henry. Look at this. Kamala Harris's biggest challenge. The vice president seems to be unwilling to help voters understand what she believes. So let's go on through it. This David Leonhardt, okay? And so he goes, as part of his reporting on Vice President Kamala Harris for Sterling Times Magazine, my colleague, Steve Herndon is black, had a revealing conversation with Jamal Simmons, a former Harris aide, blah, 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 blah. To get elected to these positions, lawyers usually do not need to lay out a broad vision of society in the way that governors or members of Congress do. Prosecutors tend to focus on specific policies, while other politicians focus on reflecting and shaping the zeitgeist. Quote, often in the White House, national leaders have to base their arguments on emotion and gut, and as a prosecutor, that's not the job, okay? So David Leonhardt goes on, blah, 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 and then he goes, but Harris still struggles with what George H.W. Bush, one of her predecessors in the vice presidency, once inartfully called the vision thing. And so he goes on, she often speaks in platitudes that creates grist for mocking Fox News videos, blah, 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 blah. And then, in some ways, Harris's much discussed political problems are simply part of political truism. The vice presidency can be a miserable job, blah, 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 blah. And we're going on, and we're talking about Pence and Gore and Mondale and all the people, you know, we can keep going on and on and on, and blah, 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 blah. But then they go, yet Harris is not a typical vice president. She's the first woman, black person, and Asian American person to hold the job, and she also serves along the nation's oldest president. Okay, then they go on and on and on with more BS. Then it's like, oh yeah, she does face discrimination, blah, 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 blah. And then she spoke dismissively to a Steed about lovely speeches and fancy speeches, contrasting them with her emphasis on actually doing the work. And then he cites this article in The Atlantic, blah, 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 blah. Now, this is where, right here, why this is bullshit. Harris has several options for doing so. She could, as most, I want y'all to see this stupid line. She could, as most eventual presidents do, signal to swing voters that she is more moderate than her party. Then it goes on, who is she and what does she believe? Even Democrats who want to like her often aren't sure. And then it goes on and on and on, on and on and on. Harris has made it very far in politics without quite having done so. Her chances of taking the final step would significantly increase if she tried to beat voters where they were. Okay, this is again to go. Okay, here you go. Now, this is some stupid shit. Now that I already told y'all, Kamala Harris can't be walking around saying, here are my thoughts on this, my thoughts on this, my thoughts on this. Why? Because she has to follow the big guy. I know for a fact that there were things that Joe Biden disagreed on with Barack Obama. But because Joe Biden was President Obama's vice president, do you know what Biden's job was? Get his ass in line. That's your job. The vice president is not a U.S. senator who can take whatever position that they want. The vice president is not a member of Congress who can say, I'm representing the 700,000 people in my congressional district. No. The vice president's job is unique in politics in that they have to follow lockstep behind the boss. Mike Pence, his ass was a ventriloquist for 4 years. Donald Trump would say some of the stupidest, dumbest shit you have ever heard in your damn life, and Mike Pence would stand there like a Stepford husband and would say, I stand clearly behind the most important and the greatest president that we've had in the history of the United States, Donald Trump. Now, that was a thought bubble. The thought bubble will say, this is some bullshit I'm having to say about this lying, narcissistic asshole, but I got to say this because I'm the damn vice president. It's a fact. So all these reporters, they sit their ass at the Atlantic and the New York Times. Why won't Kamala Harris? Why won't she define herself? Why won't she tell the voters how she's more moderate? Blah, 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 blah. She can't because she's the vice president. Because let me tell y'all what's going to happen. The moment Kamala Harris says something that's partially different from Joe Biden, Karine Jean-Pierre, Anita Dunn, the chief of staff. Why is the vice president contradicting the president? Why is the vice president not saying the same thing? Is the vice president and the president on the same page? Is the vice president and the president, are they having friction? Are they not getting along? Those are going to be all the news stories. And so then, the same people write these stories and then go, I don't understand why her polling numbers are down. I don't understand why she's not popular. I don't understand why voters are confused about who Vice President Kamala Harris is. Easy, because you dumbasses keep writing stories like this, which then cast doubt as to whether she has an opinion on stuff. And then this fool actually wrote, which is just beyond stupid to me, is that, oh, if she's going to be a president one day, she's going to have to speak to these issues. They running for re-election. Everybody knows the moment the vice president starts acting like they running for president, it's a problem. Am I the only person who watched the damn West Wing? Am I the only person who watched Scandal? Everybody know this shit in TV. You cannot have a VP running around trying to change positions. Guess when the VP can do that? About 6 months before the election. Because even when Al Gore was running for president, Al Gore couldn't do and say a lot of stuff that was really different from Clinton because they were still in office. They were still governing. They were still, and Clinton was still the president. So I'm unpacking all of this so y'all watching can understand how idiotic members of the mainstream white media are when they craft these stories and they craft a narrative, and then what they do is they create a narrative and then question Harris about the narrative that they've created, and then they want her and her staff to somehow recalibrate to create a new narrative from a narrative that they created. When it's basic and simple. When you're the leader, if I'm the boss and your ass and your job is dependent upon me, your opinion is a private opinion. You get to say privately, up to a certain point, how you feel. But the moment we walk out that door, I expect your ass to be right here. Do you know who knows that? Football coaches, basketball coaches. When the last time you seen an assistant head coach, after they had a loss, go before the media and say, man, that was a bullshit call the head coach made. I don't know why his ass made that call. I would have made a whole different call. If that ever happens, I'm going to tell y'all right now, that assistant head coach going to have a new damn job or going to be looking for a job 24 hours later. No, your job is to fall in line with the leader. And so that's what you're seeing here. And so they create the narratives that then become self-fulfilling prophecies. That's why I really hope the team around Vice President Kamala Harris stop giving these fools all the damn time in the world to write these BS stories. Here's my whole deal. Go talk to Aaron Haynes with the 19th. Do that. Come sit down and have an hour conversation with me. Go talk to Ricky Smiley and D.L. Hughley and Steve Harvey and Dee Dee in the morning. Go talk to Black Radio. Go talk to Black columnists at different papers, at the LA Times, at the Chicago Sun-Times, at the Houston Chronicle, at the Charlotte Observer, around the country. Enough with playing their games, because you're not going to win their games. What they are trying to do is they are trying to box this vice president in, and she's already in a box. Because the truth be told, there are some people around Biden who don't want her having a larger position. Oh, I'm being real clear. And let me be real, I said it again last night. There's a bunch of people in the Democratic Party who don't want VP Kamala Harris to succeed because they've got some candidates that they are standing behind who are going to run in 2028. Do not be, so when y'all read these stories, you need to understand that there are agendas at play. And listen, here's the deal. I ain't got no agenda. I had a phone number when she was in the Senate. I ain't got a phone number now. I ain't got Doug's phone number. I don't get it. I mean, I got invited to the hip hop party. I've never had a private conversation with the vice president. Last time when she was at Essence, when she was running for office. Sure, I speak to her. We had a quick interview when we were in Selma. So I ain't got no dog in this hunt. I don't. What I do have, the dog that I do have in this hunt are the folks who want to minimize black political leaders. And the folks who are playing games, and they want to act like a lot of us don't see the games that they've been playing. Y'all need to understand what's at play. And so you're going to keep seeing these stories, and they're going to justify by saying, well, we're just asking these questions, because he's 80 years old, and she could be the president. I'm going to leave y'all on this note before I go to the panel. Do y'all remember when George W. Bush was president, and he was in the residence alone watching a football game? His ass choked on a chip and passed out. If George W. Bush had choked on that chip and busted his head on a table, Dick Cheney could have been the next president of the United States. So this whole idea about, oh my goodness, he's 80 and, any day now, she could be the president. Hell, any day now, anybody can be the damn president. We just saw in New Jersey, Lieutenant Governor of New Jersey, a sister, she passed away. She had cancer. We've seen elected officials die in plane crashes. Y'all, these things actually happen in the real world. But you need to understand the games being played. Lauren, I want to go to you first. When I see one of these stories, it's amazing how they all say the exact same thing, just in different ways.
Yeah, you know what I need? I need the black reporters who get, somehow involved in these stories to sort of wake up to what the game is here. She is actually the most criticized vice president in the history of the United States. So Steve Herndon and Zolan Cano Youngs and these people who always end up being the face of these pieces, they need to wake up to the bigger game, which is you work for a news organization that has no history, whether it's the Washington Post, the New York Times, or the Atlantic, it doesn't matter, has no history of writing positive things about black elected officials. That's not what the history of the press has been in this country at any point. Okay, it's never happened, right? We've never had a Democratic Party that's championed black elected officials. That's never happened. When Barack Obama ran, he was made fun of by the Clintons. You know, he should be serving me drinks. This is nonsense. He had to fight through the Democratic Party. He had to fight through the Clintons. He had to fight through the entire establishment, set up his entirely separate organization because he couldn't trust the DNC, right? There's never been a time when white Democrats have championed any black politician. So, I mean, if we just look at history, basic recent history, we don't have to go back to the 50s or, you know, when the parties flipped or any of that stuff. We can just look at that. We had a vice president once upon a time who shot somebody in the face at a hunting trip. That would be Dick Cheney. To my knowledge, Kamala Harris has never done anything that crazy, right? We've had, you know, vice presidents named Spiro Agnew who were later indicted. And yet we sit here talking about Kamala Harris, and you can see this theme and this narrative, which is clearly being built by some of the allies of the president. There's nobody that can convince me that this is not coming from the White House, because she is a threat to, when you have an 80-something-year-old president around who's stumbling over his words every now and then, even though I think he's done a very good job, Joe Biden, there's just the reality that he is getting older. And we've got this consequential historic election coming up where we have a guy that is talking openly about dismantling our entire democracy and the entire federal system. So this Kamala Harris discussion is huge in so many ways. But the idea that, you know, you have black reporters who somehow can't figure out that what they're doing is somehow related to the game, the bigger game, which is that you have a lot of white Democrats out there who don't want to see anybody black in power.
And she's the first female vice president.
Yeah,
let's just be clear.
We saw this, by the way, with Hillary Clinton. So when Hillary Clinton ran, there was all this sexism around Hillary Clinton. She was treated completely differently by the press. So you know, if you see it with a white woman, you're going to see it with a black woman.
Got it.
And obviously, you know, we see this across the country. It's not just on this game. This is the big game. This is the presidency of the United States.
Mignon, here's the deal. Here's a piece by a writer with The Atlantic who interviewed the other writer with The Atlantic who wrote the story on Vice President Kamala Harris. Here's why I'm laughing, okay? First of all, the headline's called Kamala Harris is trying to change the narrative, okay? That's what the headline is, okay? This is why I find this to be hilarious. Okay, I'm going to read the first paragraph. First paragraph. Since taking office, Vice President Kamala Harris has struggled to communicate her vision and the nature of her role to both the press and the public. It ain't her vision. It's Biden's vision. She struggled to communicate her role. What's her role? Sit your ass down in case anything happens. I'm sorry. We all know the role of the vice president. Did nobody ask? We asked shit for 8 years. What Joe doing? Where Joe going? What Joe up to? Nobody asked them questions because he wasn't the president.
All right.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So there's something that's underplay, I think, here, which is, yes, we're talking about a black woman, but we're also, so you were talking about New York Times, Atlantic. I might have to like cancel my subscription to Atlantic now because this is kind of pissing me off. But they have a very specific audience, right? These are more highly educated or educated white people, oftentimes liberals, right? That's getting this information, okay? Which oftentimes people will say to you, the most dangerous people in the world are liberal or white liberal people, right? And I think that in that respect, they could very well be, because oftentimes these writers are writing things that their audience wants to hear, right? There's one thing that's really concerning to me about all of this, which is it's almost as if she's not supposed to be able to play this role, right? So by sort of planting this narrative about, oh, what's her vision, what she's supposed to do, that kind of plays with this, well, Black women don't play by the rules, so, you know, but this one is playing by the rules, so we're not really sure what she's doing. And it's just this weird, very strange, like, kind of way of playing on these stereotypes about Black women are supposed to be assertive, Black women are supposed to be loud, Black women are supposed to be out front, right? And Kamala's not really that. So maybe she's just not Black enough, right? Then they'll do that later on. She can't win. No, she's playing the role well, and that's what's driving them crazy. And she's playing it to a T. You're right. She's supposed to support the president, and that's her job. And it's making them crazy that she's so successful at it.
Yeah, I mean, just Greg, I just sit here, and again, everybody who's watching, this is not, ooh, I have to go out and defend Vice President Kamala Harris. No, I'm just I'm sick of lazy-ass media people. I'm sick of every story being the same, whether it's Politico, the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Atlantic. Because, see, everybody watching, and Greg, you know this, all these damn reporters, they all read each other. People ask me all the time, oh, Roland, did you read so-and-so's piece? No, I ain't read that shit. Oh, did you read so-and-so? Did you read Maureen's Dow column? No, I have never actually woke up and said, I wonder what Maureen Dowd is thinking today. No, I've never. I don't read into this crap. When I was at CNN, they'd be like, oh, did you see what so-and-so wrote? No. You know why? I call my own people. I can actually get information from my own sources. I'm not gonna base my opinion on what somebody else write. And they all talk to each other. Look, I'm gonna tell you straight up, CNN, the Washington, D.C. people at CNN never wanted me. Greg, they never wanted me. Because I came through New York. And they were like, look, I don't know who this guy is. We don't know him. Yes, because y'all keep talking to the same boring, bland-ass people who go to the same boring, bland-ass dinner party conversations, have drinks with one another. That's why they all sound the same. And then when a Negro like me come along, they be like, damn, he sound different. Yes, because I don't hang out with y'all simple Simon asses. And that's what all of this is. So this becomes reverb. It just becomes reverb and just written a different way and different publication. And it then creates the impression in the public, oh, I heard she's a problem. What does reverb do? Problem. Has a direct impact on ratings. So then, to Mignon's point, you got these white Democrats and they whole deal and they drama. Then you got Republicans who are attacking her left and right. And let's not forget, when she ran for president, she was the target of more Russian trolls than any other candidate. To Lauren's point, Greg, somebody's like, you know what? That's a threat.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Roland, you know, and I've been a subscriber to the New York Times for about 30 years, and I read the paper every day. I mean, I will admit that, you know, Paul Krugman is probably the one who I've looked most at consistently. David Brooks just makes me laugh out loud with his ridiculous worldview. And the Times has tried to move. They were never a left paper, contrary to what people might think. And now they got Brett Stevens in the rotation with his silliness from time to time, trying to pair him with liberal columnists over the years. But, I mean, you know, Lauren has laid it out, and she named it. You know, this is her bailiwick. So when she's talking about a cat like a Steve Herndon, he's trying to get put on. That long-ass article that the white dude is basically giving a preview to that dropped on the 10th is for the New York Times Magazine. So it's going to run on Sunday in the print edition. And, you know, I'll read it again. I mean, I've read it already. It dropped on the 10th. But let's be very clear. What you said, Roland, is all that people need to know to understand what's going on here. I don't know whether it's the governor of New York, whether it's just the Biden people. Hell, I don't want to sound like Beer Kavanaugh and blame the Clintons, but let's not forget Maggie Haberman wedding up to Trump, and back in the day, Judith Miller with the Iraq War. The New York Times is damn near unreadable at this point, particularly given the events of the last week in the so-called Middle East. I mean, at this point, it's pure propaganda. And when you start, I don't want to sound like Noam Chomsky on this either, but in the case of a Steve Herndon, hey, let me be very careful, because some of these people are my friends. Not this dude, but I'm saying that the New York Times has a kind, and the New York Times not alone. As you say, I mean, as you say, Mignon, it could be the Atlantic, it could be the New Yorker. You know, they're very careful on who they curate, and they know that they can't keep running out these same white boys and white girls all the time. So at this point, they've got a bench of black folk who are younger, who are ambitious, who are willing to do the hit pieces. And a Steve Herndon, who claims he interviewed 75 people for this and talked to the vice president one time, and they canceled the second interview, and he lets the world know it in the end of his long-ass article, he's getting dragged for filth on social media about that article by people who were at some of the same events he's reporting on in there to say that people weren't enthusiastic. White reporters are saying, I was at that same event, and that's a lie. He's catching hell on social media, but let's be clear. The New York Times, the Atlantic, the New Yorker, the New Republic, you name, they are not written, as you heard Mignon say. This is not for the hoi polloi. It ain't for hoi polloi. It ain't for the people. It's for the policymakers, the inside baseball people, and they got the long knives out for Kamala Harris, and one of them long knives might be coming from the West Coast, even though the governor Newsom appointed in the Senate seat one of Kamala Harris's backers, who is quoted in the article. This is some intrigue, Shakespeare, Julius Caesar shit going on right now. And
again, and in the TV version, they all watch Morning Joe.
Oh, no question.
And that's that's just the real deal. All right, y'all. I got. Mignon, I told you, look, we don't hold back on this show. This ain't the mother people show.
Oh,
This is black and independent. And for everybody out there wondering, because I love the people sitting there telling me, I had some food yesterday, man, you need to stop cussing. First of all, kiss my ass. That's first. I mean, we're gonna start there. And I just want y'all to understand. All I want y'all to understand. This is what MLK wrote in, first of all, that slogan from the nation's first black newspaper. We wish to plead our own cause, too long have others spoken for us. So we get to speak for us on this show. But the other quote came from Dr. King in his book, Where Do We Go From Here, Chaos or Community? When he said there are 4 institutions that are structured to liberate black people. One of them he called the Negro Press. And this is what he said about the Negro Press. He said that there are too many Negro newspapers, too many Negro newspapers have veered away from their traditional role as protest organs, agitating for social change, and have turned to the sensational and the conservative in place of the substantive and the militant. That's why we do what we do, because we're not about to sit here and bend over and bow down and repeat what everybody else talk about. That ain't how we roll.